Ooh, we're making a YouTube video. Scary. Hi, and welcome to ww.bjw. I'm BJW, those are my initials. So, I'm not amazing at talking about myself unprompted. If you ask me a question, I can definitely answer that for you, but if you just say, tell me about yourself, the only two things that ever come to mind are I'm alive and I'm black, and I'm so sure you can see that. What I am good at talking about, though, is all the stuff I see on TV. I can run my mouth about movies and TV shows for hours, and sometimes I call my friends and I do, and because I'm pretty sure they're starting to get a little sick of me, I'm gonna bring all those thoughts to YouTube for all my new friends over here. If my voice sounds familiar or my hands look familiar, you might have come across my film review junk journal page, Film Junk. If you'd ever heard of Film Junk, boy, are you missing out. We cut up paper, we talk about movies, we engage in debauchery. It's a good time over there. You should consider going to follow me. If you're bored. You're sitting on the couch not doing nothing with your life anyway, call ICDC College and get started today. Does ICDC College still exist? Is that a thing? Are they accredited? I promise we're going to talk about Euphoria today. This is super off topic, but do you guys see these African American braids in my head? My entire life, I have wanted the skill of being able to braid my own hair. And about a week and a half ago, I just woke up one day and decided, you know what? Having that skill is a part of my birthright. And y'all, I gave myself braids. Are the parts even? No. But are they falling out? Also no. I feel so powerful. Like, I've leveled up as a black person. Yesterday, I was a Charmeleon. Today, I am a Charizard. Enough about me. Let's talk about Euphoria.
Oh my god, I have such a feeling of euphoria.
Euphoria is either a TV show or a social experiment, and I can see the argument go either direction. I have about 2,000 questions for Euphoria, and 1,999 of them start with the word why. But there is one special question that starts with the word who, and that's, who is this show for? If it's for children, y'all are irresponsible. And if it's for adults, y'all are creepy. Before we get too far into it, I do want to start here. I'm in this for the love of the art. I truly think movies and TV shows are just the coolest thing. Getting any of them made is a minor miracle and a testament to the cast and very extensive crew. I think most things are worth making, most things are worth watching, and Euphoria definitely falls in that category. However, that does not mean they're above criticism. Quite the opposite, actually. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. Euphoria is so sexually explicit in nature that it becomes extremely difficult to watch because it's starring teenagers. And teenagers have sex. I get it. If nobody gets it, I get it. When my parents were 40, I was like 25. You know why? Teenagers have sex. It's a fact of life and it's worth exploring in media, but if I'm supposed to contextualize Maddy, Nate, Rue, Kat, Jules, Cassie. How did I forget about Cassie when I'm talking about sexually explicit material? Whew. If I'm supposed to contextualize all of these characters as children, why am I seeing them be filmed in these very explicit ways? There's so much media dedicated to high schoolers exploring sex. Easy A, Juno, American Pie, the list goes on. But those movies don't feel icky to watch because they're filmed in a way that feels like they're really trying to explore a theme. Where in Euphoria, I feel like they're filmed a lot of times in a way where they're trying to explore soft core. This isn't Blair Witch Project, it's not found footage. Nobody picked up a random camcorder and just started recording. TV shows require so much thought, discussion, time, consideration before anybody ever hits a set. Put the creative part aside, just think logistics. We have to know who we're filming, where we're filming them, what camera do we need, if we need that camera, what lens, if we're using that camera and that lens, what light, where's the permits, where's the crafty. It's a pretty large undertaking, which means that movies and TV shows are made intentionally. So then we have to interrogate the intentions of a piece of media made to star contextual children, filmed and photographed in such explicit ways for the consumption of adults. One of the moments that sticks out to me that in the grand scheme of it all is probably pretty minor. It's the high school dance at the high school starring the high schoolers. Nate and Maddy have broken up, and so they both bring separate dates to try to make the other person jealous. Totally fine. High school antics. But when Nate walks in with his date, her dress is pulled up and his hand is on her bare bum bitty bum bum, and the camera is right down there to make sure you see it. And my question is why? Like, the actress, of course, is a grown consenting adult. However, the show that's asking me to suspend my disbelief and tune in every week is asking me to believe that these are children. So why specifically did you film the child like that? And I think even more annoying is it doesn't add anything to the scene. She could have been fully clothed and the scene would have still been just as impactful, because the real impactful moment comes when Maddy and Nate start to dance and they discuss how toxic and terrible their love actually is. You want to be explicit? Fine. Age your characters up and make the show star adults. Problem solved, all in a day's work. Now let's get to Euphoria Season 3. Euphoria Season 3 was so distant from Seasons 1 and 2 and the characters that we supposedly knew. Bars.
That's called mother bars, n***. You know nothing about that!
I have two general thoughts before we get into the specifics. Number one, completing the series finale of Euphoria without the visual styling of 1 and 2 and Labyrinth's music is absolutely criminal. Labyrinth's music is the E and the U in Euphoria. Without it, we're just watching Euphoria. And there's a time and a place for Euphoria. But I'm here for the U. The look and sound of Euphoria Seasons 1 and 2 put the show in a lane that belonged completely to it. It was cool, it was original, and changing that is like, it's like you're on I-95, you're in the fast lane, and you look out and you see that it's clear as far as your eye can see. And instead of you just enjoying that, you look over to your right and you see 2 lanes of bumper-to-bumper traffic, and you go, yeah, I'm gonna go over there with them and do what they're doing. You created a lane of your own, you held a lane of your own, and you decided to give that up. Now, I am kind of undermining my point here. I will say Euphoria Season 3 was shot beautifully. It is, in my opinion, probably top 15 most beautifully shot seasons of TV. However, it's far more derivative of things we've already seen than what the original styling of Euphoria was. One of my biggest character questions for Season 3 is, why are these people still in each other's orbit? I think the show could have been drastically improved by just cutting Lexi Howard, Jules, the Jewel, I don't know Jules' last name, and Nate Jacobs. And that's no knock to any of the actors. I think the actors all did a great job with the material that they were giving. I think the performances really do stand out in this show. It's just that the characters don't add anything this season, so why keep them? Lexi's whole purpose this season seems to be to loudly remind everyone how much she disdains their life choices and dislikes them as people.
What's wrong with you people?
Maybe if this was the year after high school, okay, fine, but it's been 5 years. She has nothing in common with these people. She doesn't respect their morals or their decision-making skills. Why is she still around them? I feel like because Lexi's character alone just isn't interesting enough and she holds no actual dynamic weight in the story, they made so many plot points converge around her job. And again, why would that be happening? None of my friends have ever come to my job. You can't convince me that if there wasn't one more episode this season, Nate Jacobs would have showed up to the set of LA Nights and somehow managed to extort those 2 director ladies out of $300,000. Because everybody else is there. Why wouldn't he be there? And it's the same thing with Jules. Jules' entire point this season seems to be to paint Peni. And I wish that was a witty observation or a funny little joke exaggeration, but no. That's what she does the whole season. She gets wrapped in saran wrap and paints. That could be cut. I would say maybe bring Jules on for like 1 episode. She can paint a Peni in it if you really just need her to. But give her some type of like reunion with Rue that actually leads somewhere. I think having 2 special episodes after the end of Season 3 dedicated to Jules and Ali and how they're coping, how they're processing their grief, maybe their final interactions with Rue, maybe the 2 of them meet each other. That would have been an interesting way to like book in what they did with Season 1. But I also think at the end of Season 2, there should have been 2 special episodes, one dedicated to Cassie and Nate and their relationship, and one dedicated to Maddy and how she's getting through that abuse and betrayal from her 2 soulmates. But nobody listens to me and they didn't do that. Either way, the bonus episodes were cool and they should have kept that idea going. And that brings me to the curious case of Nate Jacobs. I think Nate should have been largely left out of this season because his role was inconsequential at best. I wish they would have wrapped Nate and Cassie's entire story up in the first episode. Like, dedicate about 30 minutes or so to telling the story that you told over 8 episodes. Keep most of it the same, just truncate it. So we would still get the big tacky house, the big tacky wedding, the big tacky wedding dance, and the $50,000 worth of flowers. Give us the white fritillaries, give us Nas and his sidekick, the finger snatcher, as I've been calling him. We could still have Cassie starting her OnlyFans to help pay back Nate's debt. We get a snake, we get a casket, we all scream, we all cry, the end. It would have been an excellent Rue Bennett voiceover, and it would have been a really cool way to kick off the first episode of this season with Nate already dead. Because making me wait week to week to see which piece of Nate Jacobs is going to get torn off next Pull all his fingers and toes off and bury him alive, fine, but with haste. That way, we have all this extra real estate in the runtime to focus on, I don't know, Rue Bennett's struggles with addiction, anxiety, and mental health issues, which is what I thought the heart of the story was. Or at least the really cool dynamics in the story that don't get the time they deserve, like Maddy and Cassie. Their relationship was something that I was really excited to explore further, and we got little bits of them that kind of added context to the relationship. But between watching Cassie hump things or Nate lose pieces and parts, it really didn't get the time that it deserved. Let's talk about Cassie. I'm going to put Sydney Sweeney and her good blue jeans aside for just a moment. Zendaya's Ruby Bennett is a couple of notches above everyone else in the show for me. I just think she brings something really special. But the closest performance to her is Sydney Sweeney's Cassie. Cassie's a cool character. Is she a terrible person? Well, yes. But I think there's kind of an overarching theme in Euphoria that no one in this crew is worth rooting for. All of them suck in like their own special way. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not saying Cassie's a bad person because she does sex work. I'm saying she's a bad person because of pretty much everything else she does. But I do like Cassie's character. The girl who just wants to be loved, but her idea of love is so distorted and skewed that foundationally nothing good can grow from there. It's been done before, but never quite in this way, and I think it's interesting. But there is just way too much screen time dedicated to her doing porn. I'm so sorry. It's like every episode for like 5 episodes straight. Get a grip. It gets to a point where it's fatiguing, and it really does start to take away from the storytelling and the filmmaking that's trying to happen. Like the Cassie Zilla mini set, that is so cool. Right up until the moment where she whips him out and starts rubbing him on the glass. It gets to a point where we're doing too much, and I feel like that's such a common theme in Euphoria, where something really cool is starting to happen, it kind of devolves into excessive rigmarole. I don't love that Cassie kind of gets away with everything at the end. She herself suffers no real consequences. The people around her suffer consequences, and she's affected by the consequences that they suffer, but nothing happens to her. But I will say, her final shot where she's in that big tacky house again, all the lights are off except the light in her room, and the camera just kind of slowly pulls out through the window. Wow. The show is shot so beautifully. Maddy is one of the most disappointing characters for me this season. She changes the most in the most jarring, fundamental way. I think Maddy is the biggest offender of the "why are you still hanging out with these people" club. Originally, Maddy's aspirations in life were to do absolutely nothing and be taken care of, and because of what happens with her and Nate, time passing, her getting older, I can let that change slide. But once Maddy makes the decision to be a talent manager, I could only see her hanging out with people who would help in those aspirations or get her into the next room, into the next deal. The only person I could see Maddy still talking to in any way would be Lexi, and not as friends, just because Lexi works in the industry and Lexi is a contact. Why on God's green is she still hanging out with Ruby Bennett? Known degenerate. I also don't understand Maddy attending Nate and Cassie's wedding, let alone getting emotional about it in public. Her getting so overwhelmed that she had to walk out? Maddy Perez? I just don't think she would have given Cassie or Nate that level of satisfaction. And Maddy's persona is a defense mechanism, sure, but it's such a meticulously crafted defense mechanism. This is the moment that she put all those really tall walls up for. Now she lets her guard down? If Maddy was going to show up to the wedding of the 2 exes that betrayed her, she was going to show up looking stunning, which she did. When the wedding procession had started, when Here Comes the Bride starts to play, she's going to walk down the aisle right behind Cassie to get to her seat and then look her up and down. She just has this really cool quality of like gravitas and iconism that I feel like before she showed up and cried, she just wouldn't have shown up at all. Overall, she seems like a pretty discerning person. Why does she seem so dumb about Alamo? If you would have come to me 4 months ago and said, hey, I've got a confirmed Euphoria Season 3 spoiler. Rue Bennett dies because Maddy Perez spills accidental DEA-TEA to the obvious storybook character villain, I wouldn't have called you a liar, but I wouldn't have called you a truther. Let's talk about Nazis. Can you say Nazis on YouTube? As far as the Nazis go, they all seemed to be really cool with Rue up until the point that they're betrayed. And how do I want to put this? Nazi or not, when you betray someone, their attitude to you will change. The Nazis are breaking bread with Rue, laughing with her, sometimes encouraging her. I think they're as nice as they can be for being Nazis. And Ruby is a mixed girl. Correct me if I'm wrong. But doesn't that go like against their like whole like foundational core belief of purity? Wouldn't there be like substantially more vitriol? I don't know. I just feel like they accepted her really well for what they are, and it doesn't change until she does something like legitimately shiesty. If you do something legitimately shiesty to anyone, no matter what their belief system is, they probably are going to be a little colder to you afterwards. Episode 2 of Euphoria Season 3 is titled America, My Dream, but it could have just as easily been titled the perfunctory N-word episode, because 2 non-black people use the N-word and then never again. Are you guys using the slur aimed at my people for shock value? I am in no way saying I want to see any media where a white person is hurling the N-word at anyone for any reason, but what I will say is they're Nazis. If they use the N-word pretty constantly, I would be more accepting of it happening because, okay, within the characterization of a Nazi, they would probably say racial slurs. But it happening one time for the Nazi and one time for the girl who got done bad just feels like there was a writer somewhere that really wanted to get that off, and I don't respect it. Because it seems like this entire season wants to say something really dynamic about race, doesn't actually say anything, at least that I can decipher. You ever see that episode of Friends? I think it's the one with the thesaurus, where Joey is writing a letter and he wants the letter to sound more intelligent, so he opens up a thesaurus and replaces every single word and every single sentence with a bigger, more educated sounding word. But then that renders all the meaning of the sentence null and void because that's just not how words work. That's what the racial discussion of season 3 feels like to me. It's like they threw a bunch of really big racial concepts at the wall and hoped what stick made a coherent message, and instead it kind of once again devolved into nothingness and excessive rigmarole. With that being said, I did love Alamo Brown. Every second of screen time with Alamo Brown was a treat. My only small complaint with Alamo is that I do think his backstory was a little bit thin. I mean, I get it. We've all heard the tale of the boy who gets his heart broken really young by a woman, and he uses that as fuel to hate all women through time and space and perpetuity forever and ever. We get it. Alamo is such a big character. I wanted his backstory to really answer some questions, and it just turned out to be a different font of something we've all seen before. Marshawn, I'm only here so I don't get fined. Lynch is a gem. I honestly don't even know what his character name is, and I don't care. I just want to see him in more shows. Put him in everything. The show, the movie, the play. You got a mixtape, put him on that too. There really should be a show called Marshawn Lynch Does, where it's just Marshawn Lynch doing. I would tune in every week. Bishop is another character that I'm so confused by because I like the character a lot. It just feels like he always managed to be on screen and yet somehow still I know nothing about him, which is probably intentional, but a little bit weird. Certain comments he made throughout the season led to believing that he's not in Alamo's employ for fun or for pleasure. I think it's probably like a similar thing to Ruby and Lori, where he has some debt to Alamo and he's working off that debt by working for him. Bishop gives me Rosalie from Twilight. I have accepted my life as a vampire, and I'm appreciative of my life as a vampire because the options were vampire or dead. However, when there's this 16-year-old child coming here talking about they want to be a vampire so bad, of course I'm gonna look at you funny because you don't even realize what you're giving up. He's Rosalie and Rue is Bella, if Bella had a personality. So through that lens, I kind of understand why Bishop is so cold towards Rue. Then that also makes me question, why is he so soft towards Maddy? Because Maddy essentially did the exact same thing. And none of this is corroborated by the story. This is just my brain trying to fill in the blanks because I want to understand. I'm trying to fit a square peg into a round hole and it's not working. I don't know. His character just kind of left me with one big interested question mark. That's boring because there's no more episodes. So I got to figure it out by myself on YouTube. Let's talk about the reason we're all here, Ruby Bennett. First of all, I'm really into names, like in real life and character names. I think they can reveal a lot about a person. Calling someone Rue on a daily basis, which means like regret, remorse, and sorrow, and then watching their life play out in exactly that type of way is a really cool detail. Rue Bennett is one of those characters that will be talked about forever. Zendaya, you ate that. just an excellent job. Like, she took a character that makes a lot of unlikable decisions and made her so lovable and so easy to root for and to want to see the best in. Truly is the heart of the story, the core of the story, and she deserved way more focus this season, and not more focus on like how she's working in the club, but how she internally is doing. That was the most important part of the show. Unfortunately, Rue Bennett becomes extremely unlikable to me in season 3. Brother, Rue is running around the earth reading the Bible and committing grievous crimes. I called it in season 2. I felt like it got to a point where it's like the only way for her story to end is for her to die. I know we're all rooting for her to succeed and to live and to do better, but this particular character and the trajectory she's on only leads to death. I'm glad the show had the courage to kill such a beloved character, but honestly, about halfway through season 3, I was kind of begging for it. Where Rue once felt like she was walking the will she be okay tightrope, season 3 Rue, by the time that we got to her in that scene where she's like giddy to be committing like illegal arms dealing, all right, Tony Stark. And I don't think Rue is a less sympathetic character. I think my want to sympathize with her was drowned under the Tarantino-style Western cowboy rival gang action plot. And the only time this season to me she actually felt bad for the decisions she made is when they came with personal consequences. Like, we've been hearing her talk about turning over a new leaf for so long now, and it's like the leaf only got 2 sides and it hasn't been turned over yet. Rue's death scene was absolutely perfect. I have 2 problems. They are minor. Well, one's big, but one's minor. I wish it was longer. I kind of understand why it's not longer, but boy, I wish we could have stayed in that moment with her for a little bit more time. That was a great scene. And my second problem is Labyrinth's music should have been behind it, and because it wasn't behind it, it fell shorter than it should have. Was it still amazing? Yes, but it would have been more amazing with the sound that we know and love. I don't understand Rue and the Christianity angle this season, and most of that is because I can't tell if the show is trying to push us towards religion or away from it. Not that people can't do wrong and turn towards religion to absolve that wrong. Of course they can. Rue didn't even make it far into the Bible, and do you know why she didn't make it far into the Bible? Because in her spare time, she was too busy sex trafficking, drug trafficking, human trafficking, illegal arms dealing, general skullduggery, and snitching to the DEA. I would specifically take the opposite of whatever advice Rue Bennett gave me. If I was in the sea and Rue Bennett told me to swim to safety, I would drown. Nonetheless, Rue Bennett as a character should and will go down in TV history as like just such a special story, surrounded by a lot of excessive rigmarole. But her stories, Zendaya's performance of her story, her struggles, her triumphs, her victories are very important, and it's a good thing that they were filmed to be put on TV. And that brings me to Ali. So my first question is, when did Rue and Ali establish a father-daughter relationship? What am I missing there? I think they have an excellent sponsor and sponsee relationship. I think they have a lot of love for one another, sure. But father-daughter? She's like a daughter to me? Since when? Since they put it in the script this episode? Because since when? I don't know. I think in kind of a baseline way, because he's an older male sponsor, she's missing the presence of her father, and she's a younger female sponsee. Yeah, there's a little bit of father-daughter at play. Like, I think an older sponsor to any child would come from a more parental standpoint than they would with a full-grown adult. So maybe in that way, but I just don't understand where I was supposed to gather that he saw her like a daughter and she saw him like a father throughout this show. I think they loved each other. Because it's not just I saw her like a daughter, it's like I saw her like a daughter, Game of Thrones, you killed my kin, I must exact revenge on you. And they just don't have that relationship to me. For instance, he doesn't show up this season until like the last 2 episodes, right? Where has he been and why hasn't he checked on his child? If you want me to believe they have this father-daughter relationship, there's a lot of emphasis placed on Rue's phone throughout the season. Like, we see her phone, the screen of her phone, because it's tapped by the DEA, because she's talking to feds. We get a lot of shots of Rue Bennett's phone. I think once per episode leading up to the final 2, if we would have seen maybe a quick shot of Ali calling her phone and her choosing to ignore it, that would give the father-daughter thing a little more believability for me. Even though you can't be there for me, I'm still always going to be there for you. That's a little more akin to fatherly love, because a couch to sleep on and a Kill Bill style revenge plot in the last 2 episodes, that's just jarring. I also hate that Ali quit sponsoring other kids because Rue dies. He literally has a death note full of lost souls. Why is Ruby Bennett the straw that breaks the camel's back? Is it because she's the star of the show? This is not a good enough reason. Why not the person lost to addiction before Rue Bennett? Why not the person lost after her? You know, like, what about her that they've shown us in the show makes her so special that he's like, you know what, I give up, I'm done helping people? And isn't that the antithesis of his whole message? He's in this to help. Why would he give up helping because sometimes help don't work? I don't like it. Maybe if Rue was living more of a stable life and then she was still dosed, I would kind of understand his disappointment and dismay a little bit more. And I'm not trying to be insensitive when it comes to addiction. Addiction is a beast. It's a monster. There should be way more resources, way more thought and time put into fighting and helping and combating addiction in like real life. But in the show, it's like for Rue, I kind of feel like, and please comment, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have an extensive history around addiction. So maybe I'm missing something in the story that would be more apparent if I had more experience in real life. But if you have a gambling addiction and you move to Vegas and work in a casino, you're probably going to gamble. Rue Bennett worked in and for drugs. Why is her death so jarring to him that he quits on everyone else? I don't know if the way she lived in the third season and the way she died in the third season makes sense for Ali to give up. I think there could have been a story where she lived and died in a way that would make sense for him to, but this one wasn't it. In his speech, when he's telling the kids that he quits on them, poor babies, he makes a point to say basically that there's no gray area here. If you're bringing fentanyl into the country, you're evil, and that's it. That's what Rue was doing. Rue was the person bringing the fentanyl into the country. The Nazis even like mention how good at it she is. Like, it's her thing. I really truly hate the shoot 'em up scene at the very end of the show. Here's the thing. There aren't a lot of black men in this show. It is not lost on me that when we do get some more black characters, they are pimps and drug dealers. But the scene where they're all finally in the room together, when Ali is there with his homemade weaponry, calling each other mandingos and I'm gonna shoot yours off, it's this really like sexualized racial talk between them. And I don't know how we got there, but I beg us to leave and never return. Ever. Bar the door. Blow the building up when you get out, actually. It's a very strange vibe shift that was not fun to watch. And unfortunately, it's really like the last scene of the show. Oh, and Leslie and Gia being ignored in this show was gross. They were integral parts of this show and Rue's story, and instead of continuing on with them and their journey and understanding their grief and how they move forward without Rue or with Rue, I instead watched Hunter Schafer make some very gorgeous paintings of Peni and one that looked like Rue went to hell. So yeah, I think I've convinced myself Euphoria is a social experiment. What balance of excellent acting, phenomenal visual appeal, style, and music will allow us to get away with 3 seasons of relatively disjointed storytelling and excessive rigmarole? And hey, you know what? They found the right balance. I really can't be mad at them. You define success by your own terms. Thank you so much for listening to me rant about Euphoria. I would love to hear what you think, so leave some comments down below. If you would be so kind as to do the YouTube thing, like, subscribe, and go follow me on all of my socials. They're linked above. I would appreciate it. And I think I'm gonna leave you guys with like motivational quotes. So always remember to put that thing down, flip it, and reverse it. See you in the next one.